In today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my expectations for the Boston Bruins heading into next season. Now, Boston is a team, and it just seems like they're always going to be good, and that was the case last season as well, as they finished with a record of 50, 20, and 12 for 112 points, which was good for second in the Atlantic Division, only behind the Tampa Bay Lightning, and they really were competing with Tampa Bay for that top spot in the Atlantic Division throughout the regular season and really down towards the end. And you could argue that if the Boston Bruins had home ice advantage in that series against Tampa Bay, that they potentially could have moved on. Their leading goal scorer was David Pastrnak with 35 goals, and their leading point scorer was Brad Marchand with 85 points. So they've got a lot of depth scoring. Obviously, Brad Marchand had another fantastic year. It seems like he was scoring overtime goals, game-winning goals every single night, so it's nice to see him doing well. And as much as I don't like this Boston Bruins team, I've never really been a fan of them, I really do like the look of their roster right now and heading forward into the future as well. As you can say, yes, some of their stars are aging, but they have a lot of young talent that are probably going to take over those positions in the coming years, and I don't really see Boston being bad for many, many more years, which really is scary for the Eastern Conference and the Atlantic Division especially. The Boston Bruins did have a pretty quiet offseason. Aside from some depth signings here and there, they signed Yaroslav Halak to be a backup goaltender behind Tuukka Rask. I like that move because I think if Rask does go down with injury or if he's ever not playing well, I think Halak is a really solid backup to come in and really take some of the pressure off of Rask. They also signed John Moore from the New Jersey Devils. I like that signing a lot too. I think that brings a lot of depth to their defensive core, and I do like what they did this offseason. It was quiet, but they definitely did some good things here and there. They lost Riley Nash though, which I think is going to be a hit to their center depth. But like I said, they have a lot of good young talent coming in with guys like Danton Heinen and Ryan Donato, who I think could take over where Riley Nash played. So all in all, I still like the lookup of this team, even though they lost some players. Not really any big name players though. They still have yet to re-sign Rick Nash, as he's considering retirement, so it's up in the air on what's going to happen with Rick Nash. He obviously could come back to the Boston Bruins, or he could sign somewhere else, but he most likely isn't going to be a part of the Boston Bruins. But ultimately, they still have kind of the same looking roster as they did last year, and I think that really isn't good news for the rest of the NHL, and especially the Toronto Maple Leafs, because I think Toronto and Boston are going to be competing for that second spot in the Atlantic Division, and I think Toronto definitely needs to get home ice advantage in the postseason against the Bruins to finally get over that hump and to finally beat them in the first round of the playoffs. Now, taking a look at my lineup predictions for the Boston Bruins, I used Roster Resource to kind of look at the depth chart, so take this with a grain of salt. This isn't what the lines are going to be next season. Obviously, some things could change. I'm not the coach. This is definitely not how they're going to look, but I think it could look similar to what this looks like here on the screen. First line, Brad Marchand, Patrice Bergeron, and David Pastrnak. This was arguably the best line in hockey last year. I think them and the McKinnon, Landeskog, Rantanen line really were the top two lines in the league last year. Obviously, Stamkos and Kucherov as well, but that's for another video. But all in all, one of the best first lines in hockey, if not the best, and they really tore apart the Toronto Maple Leafs in that first round series. I can't believe how good Marchand and Bergeron are still playing. Obviously, Marchand is 30 years old. He's still very much so in his prime. Bergeron isn't really the most offensively gifted player, more of a two-way forward, obviously known for his defensive game, but obviously he still is a really good offensive player. And then David Pastrnak, the youth, the sniper, and the speed of this line. All in all, just a perfect top line that I don't really see changing up at all next season unless there is a injury. Second line, Jake DeBrusk, David Krejci, and David Backes, and I'm a really big fan of Jake DeBrusk. He reminds me of a guy like Rick Nash, and I think he can bring a lot to the future of the Boston Bruins, and I think he's the perfect guy to play with the veterans Krejci and Backes on that second line, and I still think they can do some damage. I'm not sure how much time David Backes has left as a top six forward. I potentially could see Ryan Donato sliding up to that wing and David Backes moving down to the third line, but it's going to be interesting to see how they all play next season. Third line, I like the look of this as well. Danton Heinen, Wagner, and Ryan Donato. I'm not really familiar with too many of the bottom six forwards on the Boston Bruins. I know I'm very familiar with Donato and Heinen, a big fan of those two, and I think that can be one of the best scoring third lines in the league. And like I said, I think Donato can move up and take David Backes down if David Backes isn't playing well and his age is starting to get to him. So all in all, the top three lines I really like for the Boston Bruins. Fourth line, I have Anders Bjork, Kuraly, and Ashari. I'm not really sure how to say his name. I'm not too familiar with that player, but Kuraly and Bjork I think are really good fourth line players. Bjork brings the size. I definitely think he's a good checking forward on that fourth line. And this is a really deep team. The left side of the Boston Bruins, Marchand, DeBrusk, Heinen, and Bjork, that's a really deep 4 players there. Obviously, the center position kind of took a hit with losing Riley Nash, but Krejci and Bergeron are still fantastic. And David Backes and Donato can play a little bit of center as well. And then the right side, I think it's fantastic. Pastrnak, Backes, Donato, and Ashari. Like I said, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. And then scratched, I have Nordstrom, who I think could potentially come into the lineup for Bjork if Bjork isn't playing well. But I'm pretty sure out of training camp on opening night, Bjork will be in the lineup ahead of Nordstrom. So all in all, I really do like the look of their lineup, especially the mix of youth and veterans. I think you need that on a good team. And I definitely see the Boston Bruins being a powerhouse again next season and definitely making a deep playoff run, especially with that lineup that they have. It looks like it is a championship forward group in my opinion, and their defense is pretty good as well, which we're going to get into next. On the defense core, you have Chara and McAvoy, a still fantastic player in Zdeno Chara, in my opinion. Yes, he's pretty old, but playing him with McAvoy, I definitely think that still is a good top pairing, and I definitely think Zdeno Chara still is a top 4 defenseman in this league, because with that reach and with his physical ability, he still will be a competitor and a competitor. I definitely think he still has a couple more years left in him, despite popular opinion that people probably think he could retire in the next coming years. I definitely think he still has a lot to give to the Boston Bruins. Second pairing, I'm a big fan of this, Torrey Krug and Brandon Carlo. Now, they're missing Brandon Carlo in the playoffs, and I think that could have been a hit to them because he's a perfect defensive defenseman to play with the offensive defenseman Torrey Krug. So I really do like them top 2 pairings. Then the depth kind of drops off, but I like John Moore and Grzelcyk. I'm really up in the air on if he's a top 6 defenseman, but John Moore certainly is. So all in all, it is a pretty deep defensive core as well, obviously led by McAvoy and Krug, the young studs back there, and then Chara, the really leader of that defense core. So all in all, I like the forward group, a really good mix of forwards, or not of forwards, of youth and veterans. And then in goal, you have Tuukka Rask, who when healthy is one of the best goaltenders in the league if he's playing to his full capability. And then you have Yaroslav Halak, and that could be a pretty good goaltending tandem if they do play up to their full capability and if there is no injury. So like the forward group, I really do like the look of the defense core and the goaltending. Now taking a look at my player stats predictions for the Bruins heading into next year, and now remember to take this with a grain of salt. This isn't how it's going to look. All these players most likely aren't going to play in all 82 games, but this is kind of just speculation on what their points per 82 games will be next season. I have the leading scorer as David Pastrnak. I think he's going to take over that leading spot from Brad Marchand. 43 goals and 48 assists for 91 points. I definitely think he's capable of 40 goals, but he does like to pass the puck a lot, but I think if he shoots more, he's more than capable of it. So I have him leading the team in points with 91. Then second, I have Marchand with 32 goals, 45 assists for 77 points. A bit of a drop-off from last year, but definitely still producing at a really high level for that first line. Then I have Patrice Bergeron, 25 goals, 42 assists for 67 points. Still, that amount of point total for a defensive forward is pretty good, and that top line I think is still going to be very, very deadly next year. Then fourth, I have Jake DeBrusk, 82 games played, 22 goals, 39 assists for 61 points, in which will really be his breakout season in my opinion. Like I said earlier, I'm a big fan of his game, and I definitely think he has a lot to give for the Boston Bruins. Then I have Torrey Krug, 82 games played, 13 goals, 39 assists for 52 points. Him really head-manning that top power play. I definitely think he's going to rack up a lot of points being out there with the talented forwards. Then I have Charlie McAvoy, 82 games played, 14 goals, 37 assists for 51 points. And then behind McAvoy, I'd probably have Danton Heinen up there around 50 points as well, and obviously Backes and Krejci. But this is kind of just where I see their top 6 point producers next season. Obviously, this isn't exactly what it's going to be. This is just my speculation on if everyone does stay healthy playing in all 82 games and plays up to their capability. So that really is just my thoughts on the player stats predictions for the Boston Bruins next season. Now, I'll be giving you guys my final expectations for the Boston Bruins heading into next season. And my expectations are high. I still think they're going to be an amazing team, and I definitely think it's going to last for many, many more years. I have them finishing with a record of around 51, 25, and 6, but for third in the Atlantic Division, and you think with that record they'd be in a top 2 spot. But the top 3 teams in the Atlantic Division, in my opinion, would be Tampa Bay, Toronto, and then Boston, and that is a really, really good top 3. And the first couple of rounds in the Eastern Conference playoffs are going to be very fun to watch. I think we're going to get another Toronto-Boston first-round matchup, but this time on Toronto's home ice for the first 2 games. giving them home ice advantage, and I think that'd be huge for the Leafs. I think next year is the year that we might see the Leafs bring out the Boston Bruins, but Boston does have the team that can compete with the Toronto Maple Leafs. So the Atlantic Division is going to be an absolute dogfight next year, in my opinion. Leading point scorer Pastrnak with 91 and goal scorer with 43. You guys seen that in the player stats predictions. But if you're a Boston Bruins fan, let me know what your expectations are for your team heading into next season. I'm very curious to hear, and that's going to wrap up the video. So make sure you guys let me know down in the comments section below what your expectations are for the Boston Bruins heading into next season. With that being said, I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please make sure to drop a like on it and subscribe to the channel for daily NHL content, and I'll see you guys all in the next video.